Finally, tonight we're going to play tourist in our own city, which is probably something we should do more often. I mean, did you ever have out-of-towners visit and say, hey, St. Louis has a great art museum, and you say, yeah, I guess, because maybe you haven't been there since grade school? Well, get your permission slip signed and pack a sack lunch, because we're going on a field trip.
In 1881, the St. Louis Art Museum was still a part of the Washington University Art Department, housed in a building at 19th and Locust. It was the era when big cities were creating grand museums to showcase how far they'd come. By the turn of the century, the museum had outgrown its space. Architect Cass Gilbert designed a new museum at the center of the World's Fair, the crown jewel of Art Hill. It was the first municipally supported art museum in America, and it observes its 125th anniversary as one of the top 10 museums in the country.
Well, Patrick, one of the most distinctive things about the St. Louis Art Museum is that its collections are comprehensive. There is virtually no significant art-producing culture in the history of the world whose works aren't represented here, and even more importantly, they're represented here by works of the highest possible quality. And so you're really getting an experience that takes you around the world and through history, and you're seeing some of the greatest achievements of each of these cultures.
Which is why it's possible to visit the Art Museum time and time again and always find something new or see something familiar in a new light. So an item as unassuming as an ancient Chinese plate can be a starting point on a journey of discovery.
You wonder what the Chinese court was like in the court in which these dishes were used was like, and what did the people wear? You know, how did they interact with each other? These are the kinds of curiosities that the museum's collections inspire. You know, these things have meanings on so many levels, and that's what's wonderful about them. You can appreciate it because it's blue. You can appreciate it because it's an object that we all use in our daily lives, a plate. You can appreciate it because it's old, because it's beautiful, or it can be a wonderful entry point into a history of a culture and a time and a place that's so very far distant from our own. Patrick, we're in the 20th century galleries, and it's important to know that 20th century is an area where the museum has real depth and strength. And it's another one of these areas we've been talking about that are really distinctive holdings of the Art Museum's collection. So in this room is one of the most important paintings in the museum's collection, and it's actually one of the most important paintings in 20th century art. Painted by Henri Matisse, a great artist. Everyone knows the name of Henri Matisse. This painting was made in Paris in 1908. And is his answer to Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, which is, of course, the great modern painting where Picasso paints these women, these nude women wearing African masks in these angular kinds of poses. And it says, this is how one makes a modern painting. And Matisse says, I don't think so. This is how you make a modern painting. And as you can see, it's not about angular form at all. There are no African masks in this picture. It's a very different idea of modern art.
As art and society change, the museum needs to keep itself relevant and in touch with evolving artistic and social issues. The St. Louis Art Museum has a history of acquiring the works of living artists. In 1915, it purchased this Monet. In 1943, it received the works of significant African American artists from the Works Progress Administration. In 1997, Untitled 45, a work by African-American artist Leonardo Drew, became a part of the collection, only 2 years after its creation. Of course, being the St. Louis Art Museum, its collection of regional art is outstanding.
In the course of American art history, there are so many important large national arcs. But right in this room, around the 1850s, St. Louis played such a significant role in that large national story. It was a story not just about nation, but it was a story about region. And we can tell that story in a way through these paintings, in particular from the work of George Caleb Bingham, whose famous election series is behind me, in a way that no other museum in the world really can.
In addition to the Knights and the Mummies, every St. Louis school kid's favorites, the exhibits of pre-Columbian, Oceanic, and African art are among the best in the world. From classical Greek to medieval, Renaissance, Asian to German Expressionism, 20th century industrial design, and more, the museum's collection is so extensive, and in some cases so delicate, that much of it must be stored. In fact, less than 10% of the museum's collection is actually on display.
We have about 14,000 works of art on paper. That's prints and drawings and photographs.
Like these?
Like these by Rembrandt. I've pulled out some incredible impressions of Rembrandt's prints here. Here we have the Death of the Virgin, and you can see here the Virgin has just died, and her soul is ready to be received in heaven. We have spent a lot of time researching our Rembrandts. They came into the collection as early as 1912, 1911 or so. We've continued to purchase them. The last 10 years we've acquired some really important ones. And we're hoping to do an exhibition in honor of his birthday in 2006.
You've got a terrific job.
I have one of the greatest jobs in St. Louis. I get to look at works of art on paper over a 600-year period in Europe, America, Asia. You can fly through the centuries in a blink of an eye.
100 galleries displaying works from every major civilization in the history of the human race could be overwhelming. But there are as many different ways to enjoy the museum as there are visitors to the museum.
We take these for granted, but it's actually an incredible gift that we're able, as regular members of society, to come and have this kind of experience that in former times was only available to a very privileged few. But the great thing about the St. Louis Art Museum, of course, is that it's free, and so there is no barrier to coming to the museum. Now, as we've been talking about, some of these works of art require sort of knowledge and understanding to get into, and that's a challenge that we face professionally. How do we help people have the tools to really come here and have a pleasant and enjoyable experience and really learn something about the works on view? And so you'll find in the galleries labels on objects, and they tell you something about the work of art on display. You'll find in the galleries labels on the walls that tell you what part of the world you're in and what time in history you're at. You'll find gallery talks that are free almost every day of the week. We try to provide a lot of different ways for people to come here and feel comfortable and enjoy themselves.